The question we're faced with when we look at the New Testament or when we think about Christian preaching and teaching in general is why? Why did Jesus die? I've been haunted by that question and actually sometimes amused by it for many years. Amused because once I was teaching a Sunday school with a class of bright 12-year-olds, and we had been working through the Gospels as you do in Sunday school, and we got to the point of the cross, and I asked them at the beginning of the class, why did Jesus die? And I said, we're going to go around, no conferring. I want you each to write 2 sentences on a piece of paper what you think the answer is to that question. Why did Jesus die? And so they all did, and we went round and they read them out. And roughly half the class did one sort of thing and the other half the other sort of thing. And it wasn't a male-female division or anything like that. It was just random. Half of them gave me what you might call historical reasons. Jesus died because the Romans were frightened that he might be leading some sort of revolution. Or the chief priests didn't like the way he was teaching and attacking the temple, or the Pharisees didn't like the sort of things that he was saying and leading people to believe, and the fact that he was mixing with all the wrong sort of people. Historical reasons of one sort or another. The other half gave me theological reasons. He died to save us from our sins. He died so we could go to heaven. There are hymns, of course, which make it easier to remember all that. He died that we might be forgiven. He died to make us good, so we could go at last to heaven, saved by his precious blood. That's one of the best known Good Friday hymns. There is a green hill far away. Maybe some of the children were dimly remembering that. These historical and theological reasons look at one another, as it were, from opposite sides of the room, and we say, how do they work together? Do they work together at all? And here's one of the odd things. Generations of Christians have said he died to save us from our sins. He died so that we could go to heaven. And have told the story about the chief priests saying crucify him, and about Pontius Pilate trying to figure out what to do and all the rest of it, and have never put these two together. As though all that the Gospels are doing, from that point of view, is just providing the backstory. And then we come with a theory from somewhere else about what it all means. But supposing some of what it all means is actually contained within that history, what would that do to our understanding of the cross? How would that, as it were, work? Is it just incidental background detail? Or do we think, for instance, that John, telling that extraordinary story of Jesus and Pilate arguing with one another about kingdom and truth and power, do we think that John is really telling us all that without it having any impact on the meaning of Jesus' death? I think that the history and the theology really do go very closely together, and in what follows in this course, I'll be trying to explore that a bit more. But for Jesus himself, what did Jesus think was going on? And again, isn't it interesting that many Christians, when they're thinking about the meaning of Jesus' death, don't actually pause and ponder very much about what Jesus himself seems to have had in mind? All our records suggest in the Gospels that he did know he was going to face death, and that he knew that this death would have what we might call a theological meaning. When we read the Gospels clearly, it looks as though, at least from the time of his baptism, when the voice from heaven quoted from Psalm 2 and Isaiah 42, Jesus was aware of a vocation, not just to inaugurate God's kingdom, but to do so by going to his death. How on earth would that make sense? What would it mean to have a vocation like that? How could Jesus himself think that through, pray it through? Why didn't people get it at the time, and why have they found it so difficult to get hold of ever since? And how does that relate to any sense of what God was up to? Are we just going to say that because Jesus was the incarnate Son of God, he knew exactly all the atonement theories that might subsequently come, and he just engineered his own death in order to make those atonement theories work? Doesn't that make Jesus just weird? How do we understand a first-century Jew, fully human as well as fully divine, according to the Church's teaching? How do we understand such a person coming to terms with a vocation to go to the place of death itself in order to achieve some kind of extraordinary new revolution?